Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Linda Ercoli, and I'm the interim director of the UCLA Longevity Center. And welcome to our monthly webinar. And we are here today with Dr. Alyssa Weakley, who is going to talk about care through the air, about remote caregiving and technology that helps with caregiving for a loved one who has dementia if you do not live with them. So Dr. Weakley is an assistant professor in the Department of Neurology at UC Davis School of Medicine. She completed her graduate degree at Washington State University in clinical neuropsychology, and she had a National Science Foundation integrative graduate education and research training grant in health assistive smart environments. She also completed a geropsychology and geriatric neuropsychology internship right here at UCLA at the Semel Institute, and she now completed a neuropsychology fellowship at the UCLA Alzheimer's Disease Center. So Dr. Weakley's research activities involve developing technology-based tools and intervention methods that promote independence, brain health, and quality of life in older adults with cognitive impairment. So I want to welcome Dr. Weakley. We've known each other for a while now, and I'm really thrilled that you're here today to talk about this really timely topic of care through the air and about your research. So we're going to chat. As you know, the format of the webinar is that Dr. Weakley is going to present on the topic, and then we're going to chat a little bit and take questions from our audience. And you know that you can type in your questions through the Q&A section on the Zoom. So here we go. Thank you.
Thank you again for that introduction. And like Dr. Ercoli was saying, I'm going to be presenting on care through the air and different types of technologies that can assist with caregiving at a distance. In terms of disclosures, I have no disclosures to make, and I'm not financially invested in any of the technology that's being discussed today. So in regard to the aging of America, it's no secret that the number of individuals over age 65 has been growing over the years. And by 2040, we expect 82 million older Americans to be age 65, with 15 million of those being over the age of 85. With the rise in the number of older adults, so too is the amount of cognitive decline, with more than 6 million Americans being projected, that are living with Alzheimer's disease, and that number to be projected to 13 million by 2050. This is cause for concern because with cognitive changes comes changes in everyday capacity to do different activities, such as managing medications, paying bills on time, and remembering to attend appointments. This all results in increased care needs. This brings us to our first issue, which is the availability of in-home professional providers. Currently, the need is higher than the professional providers that are available. And resistance to having paid in-home care can be quite high as well, which results in family members often assuming unpaid caregiving roles. And just over the past 5 years, we've seen an increase in the number of family caregivers in both the Gen X and baby boomer generations. But you see that millennials are still holding quite a high percentage of caregiving responsibilities. Currently, 34 million adults are caring for individuals 50 and older, with 8.9 million caring for someone with dementia. Importantly, half of these caregivers are employed as well. This is very significant because, as we know, caregiving is more than a full-time job. And then you have another job on top of that. And this can lead to significant burnout and caregiver burden, depression, and other health issues in the caregiver. The second issue is that many older adults want to remain in their homes as they age. And they list this as more important than being financially independent, mentally active, physically active, and socially active. So it's really quite important to older adults to remain where they're at and to have support in doing so. There are three important components for aging in place. One being the person, are they a good fit in terms of their ability to live independently in their own home? Another is the place, is the environment that they're in set up in a way that promotes their independence? And the last piece is their support network. Do they have that family caregiver that can help them remain independent? But our third issue is that families are spreading out and families are living at a distance due to globalization of the workforce, but also this desire to have separate households. So this leads to the occurrence of both remote and long distance family caregiving. Most care receivers are residing in their own home, and this is in contrast to those that are living with a caregiver or in a care facility. And 21% of the caregivers are traveling over 26 miles to provide care. This is a very significant amount of time that's being spent traveling. So 12% of our dementia caregivers are long distance caregivers and providing almost 18 hours of care weekly. And so they're traveling quite a lot and providing a significant amount of care. In regard to millennial caregivers, most of them are not living in the same household. A good percent, 16%, are traveling more than an hour, and 33% are still working and juggling other responsibilities. This generation is, Gen X are starting to become the sandwich generation, where they're taking on responsibilities of raising their own family while caring for their older family members as well. And so it's an important demographic to address and come up with caregiving solutions. And one solution that I propose is to provide care through the air, through remote care technology. Before I start talking about the remote care technology, I want to emphasize that remote care does not negate the need for in-person visits from time to time. And it's very important that the care receiver clinician agree and sign off on remote caregiving and be aware of if it's appropriate for the level and type of care that is needed. And it's also important to note that remote care is not suitable for everyone, and this may change over time. So that said, the technology that I will be discussing that will help enhance and enable distance caregiving include wearable devices, everyday functioning aids. I'll also be talking about some of the sensor and smart home research, as well as the new remote caregiving support app that my team at UC Davis and I have created. So first, in regard to wearable devices, benefits include location information, activity information, and safety. So there are several GPS and geolocators available in the market. This can provide the caregiver with care receiver location information in the moment. There are several considerations, though, when thinking about whether a GPS locator wearable is right for your loved one. These include the upfront cost of the device itself, and many of these have monthly fees as well. How often is the location updated? Is it updated automatically? Do you need to refresh? Does it update every 5 minutes? And what are the caregiver needs that you have? How far away can you be from the care receiver? This is a really important one to be mindful of if you're doing some research into this type of device. Do you have to be within a certain amount of space from the care receiver in order to receive information? How will the care receiver remember to take the device with them? How will they remember to charge the device? And importantly, is it waterproof? If we want these individuals to wear the device everywhere, then we don't want them to take it off very often. So all of these factors are important to consider. So I'm going to talk about some different GPS devices, but I do want to note that I do not endorse any specific product, and the product profiles I'll be discussing are for information and example only. So one of the devices that was designed with older adults in mind is called the Freedom Guardian. It has an advanced location tracking and automatic alerts that help with everyday tasks such as taking medication. The Trackamo is a lightweight tracker that can be attached to multiple objects. So it can be put into a backpack, put into a wallet, very lightweight and small. And it provides care receivers instant alerts when an individual leaves a predefined safe zone. It also has a pretty long battery life and an SOS alert function where the person can just press a button and information is sent to the caregiver and to an operator. The GeoBit is another very small tracker about the size of an Oreo. With just one click, you can send a notification to a family care team. You can have more than one individual on your family care team. I think this is a nice feature for this device. Other ones have limited number of caregivers that you can have in your care team. You get notifications when the care receiver goes outside of a trusted place. And it has an additional benefit of having an unlimited range. Finally, there are shoe inserts that go inside shoes and provide GPS tracking. They're battery powered and they have a wireless inductive charging pad, but the downside for this is you do need to remove the sole from the shoe in order to charge it, and the battery does not last very long, so you have to charge it almost daily. So I challenge any developers out there to improve on this product because I think it could be really helpful so that individuals don't have to remember to take these devices with them, which is a big barrier to their long-term use and usefulness. In regard to activity wearables, it allows caregivers to see how active or sedentary their care receiver is. Are they following their recommended exercise plans? How are they sleeping? These are some of the questions that these types of wearables answer. Important considerations include how the information is displayed. Was it designed with seniors in mind? How will both the care receiver and caregiver see this information? And then the same considerations we have before. How will they remember to take the device with them? How will they remember to charge it? Is it waterproof? So some of these devices allow you to easily manage your health data and share it with your family members. I like that they have multiple components to them as well. So for example, the Remo Health smartwatch also has 24/7 operator help that can provide both product support and emergency services. Another wearable allows you to monitor and track your health, your activity, your heart health, and your diet goals. And Garmin also provides exercise tracking, location tracking, heart rate monitoring, and communication. So in researching these different wearables, it's important to think and ask yourself, what are the types of activities that I want to be able to monitor? Is it location? Is it fall detection? Is it activity? And find the device that suits your needs the best while keeping some of these considerations in mind. Lastly, I wanted to talk about some of the safety devices that will increase the likelihood the care receiver will get the help when they need it, and to detect falls and changes in heart rate. Again, our considerations are the cost, is there a GPS locator, is there a live operator, and a direct connect to the caregiver. So the Samsung Gear 3 notifies emergency contacts with 3 presses on the home button. It sends an automatic location to those individuals. I like that feature, but 3 presses on the home button, I'm concerned that they may have difficulty remembering that it's 3 presses exactly. I like the Apple Watch because it automatically detects if a fall happens through the algorithms. So it can tell if somebody has had a fall and is immobile, and it will automatically call emergency services. So there's no press of a button that's needed. A Lively device can be worn as a watch or on a lanyard, and it has a step tracker as well. And the Bluebell InTouch is one of the newer products that's on the market, still going through some revisions. But I like this one because it sends alerts based on changes in breathing and skin temperature, whether somebody's had a fall. I like this one because it's more than just fall detection. So for example, an individual could be sitting and become short of breath, but without, having that breathing or heart rate detection, an alert wouldn't be pushed out. So now I want to move on to everyday functioning. And if you remember those 3 things that are important for remaining and aging in place: the person, their care support network, and their environment. I want to talk about the environment a little bit more now. So in regard to some devices that help with the environment include a doorbell camera or security camera in general that can be placed in or outside the home. These provide motion detection alerts so you know when your care receiver is leaving or coming home. There are also smart light bulbs that can be controlled remotely, and you can set up automatic timers as well. Smart thermostat allows you to adjust the thermostat remotely. I think this one is particularly important, although it may not seem like it at first pass. But thermostats are pretty tricky to program and to change for some individuals. And that becomes more challenging if the individual is having some cognitive problems as well. So being able to check and control the thermostat remotely is actually quite an important thing. There's also a smart lock that allows, again, remote locking and custom schedules. You can automatically have the doors locked at a certain time if your care receiver has a tendency to forget to lock the doors on their own. Now I'm going to talk about driving a little bit, but I do have the caveat that it's important to make sure that the individual is safe to drive, and for them to have a driving evaluation or cognitive evaluation first before considering any of these types of support devices. So GPS trackers, just like the wearables, can be attached to a vehicle. And there are alerts that can be sent out in case they encounter a problem or happen to get lost or confused. Some devices can even provide essential information such as tendency to speed, sudden brakes, bumps, acceleration, and impact. And you can look at this information and utilize this information to determine if the individual is still a safe driver. Some have SOS buttons in case of an emergency and meet automatic alerts if certain contacts happen. There's also another device called Moto Safety that's actually designed for teenagers learning how to drive, that I think can be applicable in this case as well. That has a Google Maps route replay, so you can see if an individual is getting confused or what route they're taking. It also has geofencing, so if they go outside of a certain area, you get an alert, as well as other customizable location alerts. There are, of course, alternatives to driving, and I just wanted to point out one such alternative, which is called GoGo Grandparent, which is operated through Lyft. It's a pretty simple alternative to the smart app that you can have on your smartphone. So if an individual doesn't know how to use a smartphone or prefers to call and talk to an operator, this would be a really good option for them. You can have custom pickups that you predefine and set. Family members get notifications whenever the individual is using GoGo Grandparent. You can schedule services ahead of time. So this can be a really good alternative. And I just have a little review that I found on Yelp that shows how people really enjoy using this as an alternative to driving. Now, what I'm going to describe now are not necessarily smart tools, but important for an individual that's living remotely and having some cognitive troubles. So these things include automatic stove shut-off. So this is a device that is programmed into the stove itself, and you can set it to go off, have the stove go off at a certain time. Induction stove tops are a really good alternative to stoves, particularly if you're concerned that something may become knocked over onto the stove and it's a fire risk. Induction stove tops have a very low fire risk. Only certain pans work on these stove tops, so it needs to have a certain pan in order to heat up the contents within it. And they are also programmed to shut off automatically. There are also easy to use microwaves. You can pre-program things that they may microwave frequently, like leftovers, popcorn, and ones with simple dials. Medication is another important factor in remote caregiving, and making sure that medication is taken at the correct time and in the right amount. There are several different automatic pill dispensers. One such dispenser is called Hero. It can store and dispense up to 90 days of 10 different medications and can all be programmed on an app. And the caregiver can receive notifications when it's being taken. You can track adherence, and it also has support. The MedMinder provides visual, audio, and phone alerts. Caregivers also get notification if there's a missed dose. It also has a nice screen that provides weather information and family pictures and medical alert information. It's set up more like a typical pill box. So both of these options can be quite bendy, especially on a monthly basis. So cost-effective alternatives, if they are appropriate, include a 30-day organization system and talking alarm, as well as pill packs that are organized by the pharmacy paired with a talking alarm. These can also be good alternatives. Right. And I'm going to turn our attention to talking about sensors and smart home research. The two images on the left are two different types of sensors. The disc-shaped one is a sensor that would be mounted on the ceiling, and as you can see, there are no wires that are going from sensor to sensor. And sensors can also be attached to doors and to cupboards, so you know if people are coming and going, or if you're opening or closing the refrigerator or a cupboard drawer. The middle picture is an image of the smart apartment test bed at Washington State University, where I did my graduate school training. And here, the sensors are placed a little bit closer together than how we would have them set up in an individual's home. But you can see that, again, there's no wires between them. And on the right side is a diagram blueprint of the apartment, and each of the circle represents where a sensor is. And they are motion detection sensors. So each time a person walks under a sensor, it goes to an on phase. And then after a time of no activity, the sensor turns off. And through this on-off activity, our research group has been able to define different activity patterns, both with scripted and non-scripted tasks that we've had participants do in the smart apartment test bed, but also in people's apartments that we've fitted with these sensors. And I had the pleasure of, in my last year at graduate school, being able to reside in the bedroom in the smart home for a short time. And I was a little guinea pig during that period of time. So there's been a lot of research on sensors and smart homes in detecting change between healthy individuals and those with cognitive impairment. So Dr. Seeley, who also completed her graduate training at Washington State University, has found that individuals with mild cognitive impairment spend less time on the highway, drive fewer miles, and show less day-to-day fluctuations in their driving habits than healthy controls. Another research group has found that individuals with mild cognitive impairment are less active, have more sleep interruptions, and forget their medications more than healthy individuals. So this research and tracking people over time allows us to distinguish individuals at a very early stage of cognitive impairment, and ultimately will allow treatment to get started and interventions to help these individuals remain independent for longer. Our research team at Washington State University has also done some longitudinal assessments in people's own homes and have captured functional change. So in this figure here, individuals that progressed from being cognitively healthy to having mild cognitive impairment had more sleep disruption than individuals that stayed cognitively healthy over a period of 30 days. We've also found that automatic assessment through our smart sensors has detected functional decline in older adults and predicted multi-domain symptoms related to Alzheimer's disease. So the smart home essentially was able to predict cognitive decline, as well as increased rates of depression and reduced ability to perform everyday activities. There are several challenges to smart home research and using sensors in individual homes in general. And one of those being a large amount of data and continuous data to analyze. It's also really hard to develop ground truth labels for every everyday activity that an individual does, especially low frequency activities. Research is often limited to individuals from higher socioeconomic status, who are typically Caucasian. And so it's important that we extend this research to individuals with different racial, ethnic, and SES backgrounds in order to account for potential changes across cultures, but also just individual differences. So it's important that we translate this research and develop health algorithms that are reliable and valid, and that these technologies can scale and be available to all individuals. All right, so finally, I want to discuss the remote caregiving support application that we are developing at UC Davis. So based on the research and some of the information that I've presented, there is currently a lack of evidence-based tools that meet the needs of both the remote caregiver and the individual who is cognitively impaired or the care receiver. Another problem is that we haven't addressed is that physical distance can lead to emotional distance. And this can look like loneliness and depression in the care receiver, and helplessness, worry, and a sense of burden in the caregiver. So this product was inspired by my grandmother, who developed Alzheimer's disease a couple of years ago. She was living by herself in Palm Desert, and the rest of her family was spread across the West Coast, but nobody was close enough to her that we could check on her on a regular basis. And so she's really the inspiration for creating this technology. So what we've created is called Interactive Care, or iCare. It's a web application for remote caregiving, and it's an extension of evidence-based cognitive rehabilitation methods. So namely the dry erase whiteboard. It's a simple tool, but it's a vital tool in dementia caregiving. And it's always presented in a central location where all the important information for the day, the week, other types of information is located. And what I wanted to do was to extend the functionality of the whiteboard and increase accessibility for remote caregivers. The web-based platform provides accessibility from any device, so you can use it on a computer, phone, tablet, and from any location. So I'm just going to briefly show what iCare looks like. So iCare has 6 main functions. It has a homepage where recent messages are located, the current weather, as well as upcoming events for that day. It has a calendar that's color-coded, so they can quickly glance and see if they have appointments coming up, reminders, and as well as their caregivers' events that are going on. It has a to-do page that lists the events for the day, again, that are color-coded. And they can also create to-do list items. There's a goals section that allows the individuals to create and track brain health goals, including physical goals, cognitive, and stress relief goals. Importantly, it has a messaging center that allows the care receiver and the caregiver to communicate through video calls, picture messaging, text, and audio messaging. And based on feedback that we received from participants, we added a note section that allows caregiver and care receiver to collaborate on notes, such as creating vacation plans together, developing a picture album, creating emergency contacts. So that was one of the features that we added based on the interviews we have been conducting. Importantly, the caregiver can have access to all of this information, and they can help the care receiver set their goals for their brain health, help them manage their calendar, track whether they've taken their medications, and it can all be done remotely. So iCare has been based on user-centered interface design methods. We've done 2 of 3 rounds of iterative test, develop, test methods with subject matter experts, caregivers, and care receivers. We are planning on doing our 3rd validation round in the next couple of weeks. And so far, the satisfaction and usefulness for care receiver and caregivers looks very promising, with well over 80% thinking that it is a useful and satisfactory tool. So some of the responses that we've received are that it's an amazing product. It's set up for those with non-technical skills so they can grasp it. It's above and beyond anything that is available. This one's my favorite comment. It will back me up where I've lost cognition and put me back in charge of what I forgot. My second favorite comment is Google should hire you. Our next step include doing a pilot intervention with 10 care receivers and their remote caregivers, apply for NIH funding for rigorous validation through a randomized control trial, and search for some industry partnerships for commercialization of the application so it can get out to end users. All right, just have a final comment. I just want to emphasize that remote care is not appropriate for everyone, and the level type of care is expected to change over time. Remote care can be combined with paid care and day programs. And there are some signs that remote care may not be a good option. And those include if the person is prone to wandering, they demonstrate poor judgment, particularly around safety or emergency issues. They have behavioral disturbances, including delusions or sundowning. They're dependent in the basic activities of daily living, like dressing and grooming. If there are any safety concerns, there are falls risks, or have other medical concerns. I just want to briefly thank everybody who has made iCare possible, as well as this presentation. So my funders at the Healthy Aging in a Digital World, my collaborator, Dr. Sarah Farias, my undergraduate research assistant, Sue Dave, as well as my computer science team, including Dr. Shin Liu, her graduate assistant, Albara, the host of undergraduate students who have worked to put iCare together, my old graduate research mentor, Dr. Schmitter Edgecombe, who graciously shared her slides, as well as the UC Davis Alzheimer's Disease Center. And here's my contact information and my lab website. I'll go ahead and stop sharing now. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Weakley. That was really interesting. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I want to save some time. We have a couple of questions from the audience, but I did have one question. Is I learned a new term today, but I don't know what it means. I'm asking you, what does ground truth label?
Oh, yes. So ground truth is the information that we use to determine what our sensors are telling us. So it would involve us asking a person to do repetitive action over and over again for the sensor to learn that activity, such as getting up from the couch, walking to the kitchen, opening the refrigerator door, closing the door, sitting back down, and eating a snack. So we need to know what that activity is. So, and we need to label that activity so that when we see it later on in real life, the algorithm can automatically say, I know what that person's doing. They're getting a snack, they're going back, and they're going to keep watching TV. But without having a ground truth label, it would just look like noise to our algorithm.
Right. You wouldn't be able to put it together to really understand the activity. It's just like counting steps. correct?
Exactly.
Don't, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what makes that research so challenging, is getting enough ground truth labels to then make meaningful inferences of activities, and when there's deviations from activities that could trigger a warning that something's going on, a health related change or a cognitive change is going on.
Right, right. No, no. So it's the meaningfulness of the data that you're getting, and also it helps you with the predictability, right?
Absolutely.
So if somebody goes to the refrigerator and gets, a snack and eats it and watches TV after that, but then if they don't do that, then it tells you that there's something wrong with the activity level of that person.
Exactly. Or if somebody's forgetting to take their medication, for example, and you can then look at the pattern of behaviors, and if it's not happening, then you could initiate a prompt and remind the person to do it at an
Right,
appropriate time.
right. So I saw on your last slide, which made a lot of sense, who are people that really would not be qualifying as a good candidate to use this, and it sounds like people who should not live alone,
Well,
right?
I mean, my hope is that people can live alone
Mm-hmm.
with the support of this technology. I think
Right.
that there are some individuals where there is considerable safety concerns that the assistance of remote technology would not be able to account for. So,
Or yeah, because I wasn't quite understanding, like somebody who wanders, why wouldn't
mhm,
they be a good candidate for this technology?
it depends, I
Okay.
think. So, if they have a tendency to wander at night, when a caregiver may not receive the alert and be able to redirect that person, then that could be a risk, for
Mhm,
their safety.
mhm.
If they have a tendency to wander during the day and in their neighborhood, and the care receiver or the caregiver is getting an alert that this is the behavior that's going on, and they can call and intervene, and
Got it.
that could possibly be a situation where the person would be able to continue to remain at home. I think it's really a case where it's an individual case by case
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
But it is my hope that these technologies can help those that are who would otherwise need to go to assisted living, could live at home even for a little bit longer.
right. And what are the benefits for living at home, even if it is just for a little bit longer?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, there are significant cost benefits. So it's very expensive to move to assisted living care, or even having caregivers come into the home. So there are significant cost benefits, but there's also quality of life as well
Yeah,
for a lot of the care receivers, the individuals with cognitive impairment, to remain home. It is meaningful to them to have to be there a little bit longer, as well as kind of buying some time to find the right place to move to, and
mhm.
finding a solution that works. And sometimes that involves being on a wait list for a while to be able to move into a place that would be able to provide the level of care that they would need in the future. So I think
Right.
that
Yeah, that makes
my,
tons of
I
sense.
mean, another big goal though for me, especially with iCare, is that, I mean, the kind of overarching goal is if we can keep people functioning longer, especially in that mild cognitive impairment phase, right, where they're having some cognitive problems, but it's not to the point where they're not able to function independently. But if we can keep them in that mild cognitive impairment with these support strategies in home, then perhaps we can prevent that conversion to dementia. That conversion to dementia is a clinical conversion, right? Is the person no longer able to independently carry out activities? And if we can provide all the support that they need at home to carry out those important activities, then they don't convert. And maybe that will provide less caregiver distress, more independence, and enhanced sense of well-being satisfaction. I mean, a whole host of things. So I think that there's a lot of benefits that could be seen.
So do you think that somebody, and just in case our people in our audience don't know the difference between mild cognitive impairment, or we hear it as MCI, and dementia,
Mhm.
the big difference is that ability to be more independent
Yeah,
and live technically without assistance, even
yeah,
if you have cognitive problems. If you're still managing your daily life, you probably have mild cognitive impairment, but people convert or cross over to dementia when they have cognitive problems and it's interfering with their ability to live by themselves. Is that
yeah.
correct? Is that how you?
Yeah, or having difficulty independently managing things like their medications or their finances, then they could
Right,
convert
right.
over to
Hmm.
meet criteria for dementia.
So do you think having MCI is a really good kind of candidate, someone with MCI, for the smart house technology like
Absolutely.
iCare? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
And I mean, in reality, I think that it's important for us to kind of get some of these technologies on board even before MCI. So,
Hmm.
I mean, getting people in the routine of using something like iCare or using some of these different technology devices can, maybe even keep them from going into that MCI stage. I'm not sure, but, maybe it's going to keep them functional longer. If they do cross into the MCI stage, then they have this routine that's built, and they don't have to learn something new. They can
Right.
rely on these compensatory
Great
strategies that they have in
point.
place.
I mean, I was looking at the iCare thinking, this is great for, for setting goals. Like, you don't even have to have cognitive problems
No,
to benefit
yeah.
from this. Who fills out that information? Who plugs in the information with the goals and the meds? Who does that?
So it can be either the care receiver, the caregiver, or both.
And
And
caregiver can do it remotely from where
caregiver
they
can,
live?
yeah, caregiver can do it remotely.
Wow. Okay.
And so it was kind of designed so that it can scale, or it can transition as an individual might transition through their disease course.
Mhm.
So, if somebody is no longer able to input information, then the caregiver would slowly take over more of those functions. But initially, having the care receiver really use it as much independently as possible, because it's also something that's cognitively engaging, right? And so it's a
Mhm.
good thing to learn and to practice using. So we want them to use it as much as they can, but maybe later on they would use it less, and use it more as something that they view and respond to, but not input.
Mhm. And right now, though, it sounds like somebody asked if this product is available. It sounds like you're studying it still, and
Yeah.
you're running a pilot or a preliminary study. Are you still recruiting people to be in that study?
Yes, we are. So we have finished the first couple of rounds of that iterative test design process that we think is really important to create a product that's important to the end user. And
Hmm.
next, we're going to be doing the preliminary studies. So we are recruiting individuals to participate in that study currently.
And are the folks mostly up in the UC Davis, Sacramento area, or are you going anywhere else?
It can be remote as well. And this is definitely designed during the COVID era of doing things remotely. So individuals can be outside of the area as well to
Okay,
participate.
so maybe you could put your email up just in case anybody is interested. They
Sure thing.
contact you, and maybe if somebody wants to be part of a trial. It sounds really fascinating to me. I'm already going through the list of people I know that would benefit,
That's great.
and their caregivers. Um,
Yeah.
and somebody asked if you know anything about a product called Stack Care.
Hmm.
Supposedly, it uses infrared to detect movement in rooms.
Oh, I'm not familiar
Official.
with
Hmm?
that. I'm not familiar with that, but I am familiar with using infrared or heat sensors to detect movement.
So that kind of works in a way that then it says AI to detect aberrations.
Yeah. So it's very similar to, what I described as well. Uses algorithms with that ground truth label to detect if there's deviations from typical patterns
Mm-hmm.
or things that may trigger an alert or alarm, like a fall or some other type of safety event.
And so is it that a person like inputs the name of a contact person, um and then if there's an aberration, that information goes to the contact person? Is that how that works? Or
Yeah, I'm not sure how that the system is described. On our end, I mean,
yeah,
what I'm describing is a very research focused, research based, but certainly the goal is that if some event is detected, that the caregiver is notified immediately, that emergency contact or emergency services are notified immediately. Um, that would certainly be the goal of detecting those changes. And some of it, like how I described with our longitudinal studies, we're hoping can be used in detecting important health change that could be shared
yeah,
with a provider.
right.
There's, changes in their gait, they're walking slower. They're not getting up at the same time that they used to. Maybe something's going on here. Maybe there's been a change in their health status. Maybe they're sick and they need an evaluation, and that could trigger an appointment.
I see a lot of use for this because unless you're living with someone and you're caregiving, you don't know that information.
Right.
And anybody who's ever lived or taken care of somebody with a memory problem like Alzheimer's disease, they know that that person doesn't always reflect what's going on in their lives because they're just not aware of it,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
do you wander, do you get up at night? No. Or just a couple, and then you find out later from their sleep that they're pacing at night, or
Right.
they're sleeping very unsoundly and
Yeah.
they're not getting into their deep sleep. And you don't know this unless you're actually with someone. So I think this
Mhm.
is valuable to people, whether you live 10 miles away or 250, to really
Mhm.
see these kinds of changes, because this could tell you that a person is getting worse. You could maybe figure out, well, look at this is aberrant. Maybe they have a urinary tract infection,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they have a delirium and they're up all night. So this sounds
Mhm.
like some kind of technology that just tells you about movement and how much or how little could reveal major
Yeah.
changes in someone's health status that could be fixable, intervenable, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think all of those are very important points that you point out. And I think you're right that, individuals can present really well. They can present healthy, but it's not reflective of how they're doing. They may not know or remember or know what's significant to report.
Right, right. And to help you understand that, because a lot of the times too, somebody knows something is wrong with a loved one and they want to tell the doctor, but they can't really pinpoint there's, what it is. Just they've changed. They're confused. But why is often the mystery that takes a while to get to the bottom to. But
Yeah,
if you have data like this, it could actually tell you
right.
what could be going on.
Exactly. And something that, we always ask is how long has it been going on for? And does it fluctuate? And I think that those are also things that can be answered with this
Yeah.
type of technology.
So I know that we're running out of time, but I just got to say I was so struck by the number of millennials that are caregiving. The oldest
Yeah.
one is 40,
Yeah.
and they're caregiving at 40.
Yes, and it's happening more frequently. I wouldn't be surprised, and then over the course of the next 5 years, we really see that millennial number jump. And it is a concern because of that sandwich generation, where they're providing care for their children, they're getting their careers started, they're career focused, and they're caring, for their parents or grandparents.
That's what I was thinking, that probably quite a few of those individuals are caring for grandparents too,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
parents that, yeah. I've actually known, I think, a Gen Xer who was caring for her mom, his mom, who had him late in life. And sure enough, she develops dementia at 74, and he's in his 30s, early
yeah.
30s, taking care of mom. So
Hmm.
I see a lot of technology benefiting people who know how to use technology
Yeah,
now, but I think the fact that it's simplified is most important for people who are
right.
trying to learn it. Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
So I really want to thank you, Dr. Weakley, for coming here today, and it was great to have you. And it's
Thank you.
going to be plenty of opportunity for this type of technology to grow and have use. And like you say, staying at home longer is good for pretty much everybody, if possible, under
Absolutely.
under safe circumstances, which is what this is really doing.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And I want to thank everyone out there today for tuning into us at the Longevity Center. And just remember that smart technology is really about living better longer, which is our motto at the Longevity Center. So don't forget to look us up. We're on the World Wide Web at the Longevity Center at UCLA. And we'll see you again for our next webinar. So thanks everyone for tuning in. And thank you, Dr. Weakley. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Thanks.
it.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.